Let's go ahead and get started because it's 9:30. We have a lot of ground to cover. Good morning, everyone. So this is Mindfulness of Feelings, Part 3. So this actually brings us to the end of our journey through Mindfulness of Feelings. I always want to remind participants that we spend 3 sessions on feelings because it's such an important aspect of mindfulness. And really, our goal is to share with you ways that you can very skillfully meet feelings. Remember, we try not to use the word manage because that word manage implies control, wrangling with, trying to rein things in versus the ease of meeting. I might not like the grieving that I'm feeling. I might have discomfort with the anger that I'm experiencing. So rather than managing that, what does it mean when I step up to meet those difficult feelings with a different kind of awareness? Very briefly, because we're going to launch into an extended practice today that I think and I hope that you're really going to enjoy. But I want to take us into the slides just for a few minutes. And I want to kind of remind us of what we did during lesson 6. And if you weren't able to be with us during lesson 6, please know that the recording is available and take a look at it. Because lesson 6 can be a game changer. It's got some really important tools and distinctions that once these are on your radar, you can again start to think about feelings, especially difficult feelings, quite differently. So in lesson 6, we talked about the difference between being reactive and being responsive when we are confronted with challenging people, situations, and the feelings that arise in those moments. I also introduced to you the SCARF model, and the SCARF model helps us to get very, very clear about why and how, as human beings, we get triggered in the first place. For me, in my own life, the SCARF model has been a true game changer in the sense that it gets me very, very clear when I start to feel triggered. It gets me very clear about what's triggering me in the first place. And usually it has nothing to do with the person that I think is triggering me, and everything to do with some fundamental ways that I feel that some of my basic needs as a human being are being threatened, right? We mostly get threatened when the things that we really need to thrive are compromised in some way, stomped all over, not acknowledged for whatever reason. So the SCARF model helps you to understand you better, and it definitely helps you to understand why people around you get triggered. Remembering that when someone in our presence gets triggered, especially if their anger, their irritation, or their frustration is directed towards us, we will often match their level of triggering and get really defensive in reaction. But if I can just take a moment and run myself through SCARF, I have a better understanding of why this individual is melting down or becoming dismantled in the first place. And then I can make a choice. And that's really what lesson 6 is about. Lesson 6 is a reminder that in any given moment, no matter who I'm dealing with or what the situation is and how charged it feels for me, I always have a choice. I always have a choice. I can go ballistic, have a meltdown, I can fight you, I can run away, I can shut down all stress response, or I can acknowledge the triggering, take a moment or longer, however much time I need, and make the the choice for being responsive. And remember that Viktor Frankl quote, right? Between stimulus and response, between being triggered and whatever it is I decide to do, there's a space. And I have a right to spend time in that space, to stand there and choose, how do I want to respond to this person, this situation? What version of myself do I want to bring up? Do I want to present? What version of me do I want handling this? And when I ask myself questions like that, then I know that I'm headed in the direction of being responsive. So those were some of the highlights of lesson 6. And remember, the highlights of lesson 5 is just building awareness of the complexity of feelings in the first place, building the awareness of the sensation of feelings as they arise, and sort of the qualities and textures. If you remember back in lesson 5, we really went into investigative mode related to how we feel. So lesson 5 is awareness. Lesson 6 is responsiveness. And lesson 7, we get into some really powerful, more sophisticated tools for priming ourselves, really priming ourselves to meet the day, to meet others, and to meet the stressors and circumstances and challenges that inevitably will flow in and out of our lives. So I want to begin with a really powerful practice. I'm going to take a little bit of time with this one, and if you have a pen and a pad, you might want to take some notes. I have been leaning into the metta practice over the last 6 months very, very heavily. I want you to experience it first, and then I think it's going to make sense to you why it is that this has been my go-to. Some of you might be familiar with the word metta, M-E-T-T-A. It arises from the Pali language, and translated, metta means loving kindness. Loving kindness. And I think all of us would agree that loving kindness is a good thing. Loving is a good thing. Kindness is a good thing. But let's get down deep into what that actually means. When I carry an energy, when I conduct myself in a way that I'm exuding loving kindness, my day is different. My interactions are different. My life feels different. Because no matter what's going on, I know that I rest or I'm acting from a foundation of stability and ease and peace. Metta, loving kindness, is a practice. We practice it. I don't know that we ever get perfect at it, but it is a practice. I'm going to take you through the formal practice, and then we'll talk about how you can adapt it and make it your own, okay? So here are the steps. We are going to take the energy of loving kindness, and we're going to direct it in a number of different places. We'll begin the meditation by directing the energy of loving kindness toward the self. And we'll talk about that after the fact, what that's like, how that felt for you. Then I'll be asking you during the meditation to bring to mind an image of someone that is just so easy to love, a beloved. It can be a person, it can be a pet, it can be someone who is living or deceased, but just someone that it's no effort at all to be loving and kind in reference to this individual. And then I'm going to ask you to bring to mind an image of a person that you just kind of feel pretty neutral about. An acquaintance. Sometimes I'll think of my postal carrier when I'm doing a metta practice, just someone that you just have neutral feelings about and will be sending the energies of metta in their direction. And then in part 4, I'm going to ask you to bring to mind an image of someone with whom you have difficulty. It can be someone that you're having a current challenge with. It can be someone that you've really, really been struggling to forgive. It's your choice. You can go to the big one. I call it the big one. That one individual that you may not even be in contact with, that might not even still be living, that, ooh, they really, really hurt you in some way, or you've been really struggling to just let it go. It's up to you. And we're going to send the energies of metta in their direction. Just hang with it. Don't worry too much about it. It's just part of the process. And then we'll bring to mind an image of our whole planet. And then finally, to sort of top it off, we're going to go back to the self. And there's a reason for that. I'll be guiding you through every step of the way. And we're going to work with 5 phrases. 5 phrases that, again, carry the energy of metta. These are well wishes. I'm going to wish others safety. I'm going to wish for everyone in my metta practice happiness, that they stay well, that they can know the experience of peace and ease and grace. And the last one, I'm going to ask that everyone I send metta to, my wish is that they will awaken. They will awaken to the heart of who they really are. Beyond my name, beyond my role, beyond my accomplishments, beyond my past, beyond whatever my future is, I am, above all else, a human being with a heart. And the more that I can connect with who I really am, the more I can connect with that, the more peace I feel. And I want everybody to wake up to that. I want everybody to remember that at the end of the day, I am inseparable from my own heart. So it's a little esoteric, but it is a very grand and noble well wish for yourself and for others and for all living beings. So that's a lot. And the best way to learn metta and its value is to experience it. But I just wanted to give you a little bit of preparation before we come into the practice. Because this practice is longer, I want you to be comfortable. So there are a couple of things. I want to invite you to take it in a seated position, to experience it in a seated position. You're always welcome during these practices to turn the camera off. I like to do that if I'm being guided through meditation. It just helps me to go inward even more. And you're also very welcome to experience this laying down, if that feels okay for you. However, if you're feeling kind of drowsy or tired, that might not be the best position to be in. My goal is not to have you fall asleep, all right? But you decide, it's your choice, it's your experience, this is your hour, all right? So let's go ahead and get started. As always, I want you to choose whatever position feels best for you. And as always, you have an invitation to close your eyes or to keep them open. Remembering that if the eyes are open, we want to keep our gaze very soft, preferably focused forward and slightly down, so that the eye musculature is not strained at all. If you're sitting, although I want you to be relaxed, I'd like for you to sit up a little bit taller in your seat. so that you just have a sense of the length and the dignified nature of your spine. For the next few moments, just drawing your awareness to your breath, just as it is. Maybe checking in with the quality of your breath, where the breath seems to be coming from. And as you're taking the breath in, where it's landing. Relax your shoulders. Soften your jaw. If you're seated, start to feel that you're relaxing down through your seat. Keeping your awareness on the sound of my voice or the sensation of your own breath or any other anchor that's working for you today. We're going to begin by directing the energies of metta toward you. So I want you to imagine, as you hear my voice, that you're addressing yourself. Listening carefully to each of the phrases and just noticing any openness to or resistance to, loving kindness directed toward you, from you. May I be safe. May I be happy. May I be well. May I know the experience of peace and ease and grace. And may I awaken to the heart of who I really am. Maybe softening a little bit more through the shoulders. If any tension or resistance came up, just allow that to soften. And gently bring to mind an image of someone who's so easy to love. Directing the energies of metta toward them. May you be safe. May you be happy. May you be well. May you know the experience of peace and ease and grace. And may you awaken to the heart, who you really are. And now bringing to mind an image of that individual for whom you just sort of have a neutral feeling about. Don't search too hard. Whoever comes to mind, just allow that person to come to mind. Maybe it's an acquaintance, but just neutral feelings. sending energy of metta in their direction. May you be safe. May you be happy. May you be well. May you know the experience of peace and ease and grace. And may you awaken to the heart, your heart, who you really are. And in a very gentle way, bringing to mind an image of that individual with whom you have difficulty. Nice and safe and softened in your own body. May you be safe. May you be happy. May you be well. May you know the experience of peace, ease, and grace. And may you wake up to your own heart, remembering who you are. And now bringing to mind an image of the entire planet. All living things. May all living beings be safe. May all living beings be happy. May all living beings stay well. May all living beings have the opportunity to know the experience of peace, ease, grace. May all living beings wake up to their own hearts, who they really are. And now coming full circle back to you. Relaxing the shoulders a little bit more if they've tightened up, relaxing through that jaw again, the face, the seat. Really taking this in, and it might land a little differently this time. May I be safe. May I remember that I deserve happiness. May I be and stay well. May I get to experience moments of peace and ease and grace. And may I remember who I really am. This heart, my heart. Closing this practice by just taking a few final moments of observing, noticing what it means and how it feels to have given, exuded, released so much metta, loving kindness, and what it means and how it felt to receive it from the most important person you could ever receive loving kindness from, you. Whenever you're ready, but only when you're ready, open your eyes and let the world around you come to you rather than extending out. Just let the light come in, your environment come in, this virtual space we're in, let it come to you. So I'd like to take just a few moments, if any of you would be willing to share what that was like, how that felt. I'd love it. You can unmute yourself. Anyone?
I haven't turned this camera on since our last Zoom, and it was very funny when I popped up in the mountains. I think that was very wholesome. I think that was the thought that I had in my head when we were going through it. It was hard to pinpoint for the fourth person, because generally I don't dwell on hating people or hating someone. It's not like I feel as if though it's not worth my time, so I don't put the effort into it. Yeah. And it's weird to see. So that was kind of tough to do, like to pull back to the years ago.
Yeah. You know what? I have to share with you that in all of the times I've led this practice, I have never had anyone say that that step was hard for them for the reason you just described. Right?
Yeah.
What I would say to you then, if you liked the practice of metta, when you get to step 4, put anybody in there, anyone that you won't feel you want to send metta to, because what we don't want to happen is we don't want to get to step 4 and actually evoke anxiety because we can't figure out who we're going to pick. You see what I mean? One of the reasons why I like to sort of tell you what's going to happen is because during the meditation, I don't want anyone stretching for who am I going to put into this place? And sometimes people will say, I felt a little bit of stress because I have so many people I love. I didn't want to just pick one. You know, my response is, you can do metta as often as you want. You can imagine a whole gathering of people that you love. It's just about sending the energy. And So thank you for that, because now what you said is something I'll share in my instruction moving forward. I don't want us to get to step 4 and have anyone working hard, you know, to find someone to put into that spot. Thank you for that. Anyone else? It's probably the longest practice that we've done throughout our time together, and so you might be feeling a little bit spacey. So I'm you know, it's completely okay if you'd like to stay quiet. But if anyone wants to say anything, we've got small enough of a group here. You can always just unmute and jump in. So you know, just on the surface, metta is a good thing, right? And I just want to make a couple of comments about it. So we start with the self, and many people, when they sort of hear initially how we're going to move through it, like the trajectory of how it goes, they almost always think that step 4 is going to be most difficult until they get to step 1 and they realize, oh man, I didn't realize that I'm very reluctant. You know, I can send out compassion and loving kindness all day long to all kinds of people, but whoa, I have a lot of difficulty sending those energies to me. It's one of the reasons why I take us back circle. Because by the time we get to the end of the practice, most of us are sort of literally marinating in the energy of loving kindness. And sometimes it's then easier to bring it back into yourself. Step 2 is often very easy. Step 3 is pretty easy. Step 4 can be challenging. One of the reasons it's in the 4th spot is because you're kind of primed to get to that one person with whom you have difficulty. And many of us, by the time we get to step 5, it's powerful, right? Because this planet is suffering. And we just want to send as much out. Oh, I want all human beings all over the planet, all living beings, to feel safe and happy and well and to know peace and to wake up to who they really are. So that can be a very moving part of the process. And it usually ends there, but I've done this long enough to know that sometimes people need the extra blast of coming back to the self, especially if step 1 was difficult. So the phrases that I used are variations of a very formal practice. They didn't work for me when I first started practicing metta. So here's what I did, and here's what I always advise. You can come up with 3 to 5 phrases that really matter to you right now. Like if you could wish loving kindness onto others, what would you want to wish them? Maybe you'd want to wish safety, wellness, happiness, whatever it is. Maybe it's other qualities. So you can make your own list and you can move through the 5 steps that we moved through and create your own phrases. And I really recommend doing that so that you make this practice your own. Now, we were in that for about 10 to 12 minutes, so that's pretty lengthy. If you liked it, you can extend it out, you know, really spending time on each of the 5 individuals, really taking time between, you know, moving on to the next one, or you can do it really quickly. You can be in a crowded airport feeling really irritated and anxious and just within your own mind go through the whole process. Again, it is a portable practice. It doesn't have to be experienced in the way we did in a formal way. So if everything were to shut down right now, Zoom collapsed, the class was over, this would be enough. But I want to share something with you that's really important and I think is going to make the practice of metta even more important. And that is to really look at the science behind it. There is science behind compassion and self-compassion that really deserves our attention. So we might already know, wow, when I'm feeling really open and really willing to give loving kindness, when I feel compassionate, it's not only good for others, it's good for me. Compassion benefits everyone. And now we know why. I've never been in an experience where I was feeling very compassionate and feeling awful at the same time. It's very hard for both of those kinds of experiences to live in the same brain. And there's a reason for that, okay? And this is really the neuroscience of compassion. And a lot of this work comes from the work of Dan Siegel, and a lot of this work, especially on self-compassion, comes from doctors Kristin Neff and Christopher Germer, who study the science of self-compassion and have really emphasized how critical it is for us on a daily basis, when possible, to take moments where we are mindfully self-compassionate. So this is kind of a really quick tutorial or glimpse into what happens in our brains when we are stressed. So typically, a stressful situation occurs, you're feeling triggered, I'm feeling really charged up, I'm about to get really reactive. You know, we know what those signs and signals are. There are usually two neurological responses that arise, and I usually will pick one, but I don't even realize I'm doing the picking. And the first is the stress response, and we all know what that's like. I'm feeling triggered, so I'm going to get ready to fight you. I'm feeling triggered, so I'm going to get ready to run away because I don't want to deal with this. I'm feeling triggered, and I notice that I'm paralyzed. I can't even speak. I can't even speak because I'm so shut down, I'm frozen. Those are stress responses. And those stress responses are primarily dominated by the expression of cortisol and adrenaline in the body. Cortisol and adrenaline helps us to fight, to flee, to freeze, shut down when we need to. So I might go there. Another place the mind might go, or a neurological response that might come up, is what we call the pleasure-reward response. I'm very triggered. I'm feeling the discomfort of that. I don't like how it feels. So I'm going to seek out some kind of pleasure, some way to reward myself, because I can't deal with the discomfort. Very common. By the way, I really want to emphasize, we do these things all the time. That stress response is pretty much dominated by the presence of dopamine. And the way I like to describe dopamine is it's like a warm blanket that I've just wrapped around myself. It feels good, makes me feel safe, makes me feel soothed. So pleasure-reward response might be, I feel discomfort. I'm at the refrigerator, standing there, looking for comfort food. Or I'm mindlessly scrolling Facebook, because the actual act of scrolling has a soothing effect on the mind, just the act of the scrolling. Or I'm engaging in some sort of behavior that makes me feel good. The problem with pleasure reward is it is so temporary. Dopamine wears off, I'm back to the discomfort, and then I'm back to the freezer, or I'm back to Facebook, or I'm back to what Netflix binging, or whatever it is that takes me out of the discomfort. As you're listening to me, right, you might be putting together, this is exactly what begins to happen at the onset of an addiction. Okay, it's not surprising. Really want to emphasize. These are our go-tos, all of us, myself included. But we always have a choice. We could do something else. We could bring our brain state, train our own brains to come into what's called the tend and befriend response, neurological response. This comes out of the research of Dr. Shelley Taylor, who's at UC Berkeley. This is a mindful response. This is the choice for compassion. So, triggered, feeling stressed, feeling really uncomfortable, I say to myself, I don't want to fight this. I don't want to run from this. I don't want to shut down. I don't want to go to Facebook. I'm going to tend to this. So I tend to the discomfort in a kind way. You're watching a child learning how to ride a bike. And she's up and she's down and she's up and she's down and she falls one last time and she skins her knee and you're observing. And what do? You run to her, you get down on your knees and you see the bloody knee and you tend to it. You're not screaming at her. You're not fighting at her. You're not running away from her. You're not freezing and shutting down. You're not running to Netflix binge watching. You're tending to the discomfort, the wound in a kind way. This might sound trite, but what would it mean and how would it feel that when you start to feel the charge of the stress, when you start to feel the discomfort, rather than going into stress response, rather than going to pleasure reward, you say, no, I'm going to deal with this discomfort in a kind way. And when I do, I begin to generate within my own body oxytocin. Oxytocin has a similar effect of dopamine in the sense that it is very soothing to us. Oxytocin jumpstarts the generation of serotonin. And so a calmer state begins to arise in the mind. Oxytocin is affectionately known as the cuddle hormone. It's the hormone that gets generated when people hold each other. It's one of the reasons why we love to cuddle. It's the hormone that's generated when two people come into an authentic, loving embrace that they hold. It's the hormone that's generated when two people are very connected while making love. It is the hormone that is running through the body of a woman who's just given birth and holds her child to her chest. Or the other partner who's holding the child for the first time. It's one of the reasons that we love to hold a living, breathing animal. Or we love to rock a baby. Or we love to be held in the warm embrace of a loved one. It's the hormone that runs strongest in two people who are falling in love. You know when you feel so good when you're falling in love? Or you're witnessing two people and they're clearly in the early stages of love and you're thinking, oh God, look at that. Now you can say, there's a lot of oxytocin happening there. Oxytocin is so important for us. We need cortisol when we really need to fight, flee, or freeze. Sometimes we need the dopamine. Sometimes I need the the Netflix binge, right? Sometimes I just need but I need to know that it's temporary, and then I'm going to go back to the discomfort. Oxytocin will never drain your system. It will never deplete your system. It will never cause long-term harm. Constant cortisol will, constant adrenaline will, constant dopamine will deplete your system. We're not meant to stay in those states all the time or in a chronic way. So I always have the opportunity, whenever I'm stressed, to make a choice to start to generate oxytocin. And the first and easiest way to do that is, when I'm feeling the discomfort, is to make the decision. I'm not going to go into stress response. I'm not going to go into pleasure reward. I don't really like what's happening here. I don't like the hurt I feel, the skinned knee I have, but I'm going to tend to it kindly. So one of the hallmark practices in Drs. Kristin Neff and Christopher Germer's work on the mindfulness of self-compassion is what is called the self-compassion break. And again, this is something that you can use right in the moment of when you start to feel really stressed and anxious and charged. And the self-compassion break has 3 parts. It's very, very easy to remember. Again, if you have a pen, just jot this down. So step 1 of the self-compassion break is awareness. Oh, this sucks. I don't like what's happening. I don't like how I'm feeling. I'm really triggered right now. The words that they use is, whoa. I'm really aware right now that I am in a state of suffering. I'm suffering. That's step 1. That, by the way, is paramount. Just the awareness. That's mindfulness, period. I'm suffering. Step 2. This one is a stretch, but bear with me. I know, I can be certain of this, that all over the planet right now, there are other people that are suffering in the same way, maybe worse. Or there are people all over the planet that have felt this way before. I am not alone in this. Step 2 is not in any way, shape, or form there to make you feel bad about your suffering. It's not there for you to say, oh, I'm suffering, but I'm not the only one. Step 2 is a way to, as they put it, to connect you to common humanity. Because sometimes when our suffering is really extreme, we do have that sense. We have a sense that this might never end. And we have the sense that I don't think there's anybody else out there that has felt this. So common humanity should give you a break. Like, oh, this sucks. I don't want this to be happening. I'm not the only one. I have shared human beings out there that have had this experience or something similar. Step 3 is the easiest and the hardest step of all. 2 words. Be kind. Okay. Step 1, this sucks. Step 2, connect to common humanity. I am not alone in this. And step 3, so I should just really be kind. Now, when I heard about the self-compassion break, I thought, this is bullshit. You know, it sounded really, really silly to me. But I was also intrigued. And whenever I'm intrigued and suspicious of something, I usually make a commitment to practice it for 30 days. And this was one of those things. So I practiced it for 30 days. Every time I felt charged about something, I paused I'm suffering here. Not alone in this. Okay, just be kind. The first couple of days, again, really hard for me to get on board with it, but I kept doing it every time I got charged up. And by the end of the 30 days, I saw the impact of this practice. It not only fast-tracked me out of stress response, it really helped me to get up close and personal with how hard I am on myself. Really, really hard on myself. Brutal. And then by the end of the 30 days, and I'm still working on this, by the end of the 30 days, I really understood what self-compassion means and how healthy it is. Not just emotionally, but for all of the reasons that are on this screen. There is neuroscience behind this. So I want to take us full circle because we're getting close to the end here. The metta practice that we went through. So there's a method to my madness here. We started there because I wanted to soak you up in the experience of shifting you hormonally. If you really sort of got into that metta giving, sharing, you were producing and generating your own oxytocin, and lots of it. It's one of the reasons why after metta, we feel better. It's one of the reasons that when you are engaged in an act of compassion, volunteerism, doing something kind for someone, sharing a kind word, it feels good. And that is not selfish. We all benefit each time we choose to be compassionate, each time we choose to be loving and kind. The more of that you can do, the more you start to shift your own hormonal, neurological, biochemical state. We've got the scientific evidence to support how important it is, as often as possible, to practice both compassion and self-compassion. Couple of highlights here. I would be remiss if I didn't sort of put this onto your radar. When things go wrong, I want you to notice this. This is yet another moment of mindfulness. When something feels like it's going wrong in your life, in your work, whatever it is, I want you to notice, because this is a very human tendency, when something is going wrong, one of the first things we do is we blame ourselves, or we go into self-criticism. And if we don't do that, we're blaming outward. Just notice. But if your tendency is to blame yourself, I need you to know that when you engage in self-criticism, self-judgment, negative, bullying self-talk, you actually turn on your own stress response. Because when I attack myself, think about it, when I attack myself through my own thinking, I'm my own threat. So that stress response turns on because it feels like my very being is being attacked. So when we self-criticize, we become the attacker and the attack. You'll notice people around you who are chronically self-judging. They're just really, really brutally hard on themselves, and ask yourself, are they radiant, vibrant, well? Because you might notice that most of the time they're exhausted, they're negative, they're stuck. They might be finding themselves not feeling well a lot of the time because their systems are drained. So we have to be very, very mindful if we're in this. By the way, many of us are in this, myself included. This is why compassion practice, self-compassion practice, is for me akin to taking a daily medication for a condition that I might have that I need to, sort of keep monitored or keep managed. It's that important. It's like daily medicine because of what self-criticism does to the system, our physical system. So when we can engage in self-compassion and compassion, again, it turns on that mammalian response. Mammals have an inherent nurturing instinct. They have a survival instinct and an inherent instinct to nurture. It's just as strong. We all have that. And when we generate our own oxytocin, it doesn't mean that you have to be hugging someone all the time. Many of us are living alone right now. But it does mean that we can elicit or evoke oxytocin through acts of compassion and self-compassion. So when there's oxytocin there, it inspires a sense of trust, calm, safety, connection. Practice it. And this does not mean by any stretch of the imagination that we have to do this in the way that I described. I'm looking for a slide here. We went through the formal metta practice, talked about why it's important, why compassion and self-compassion are important, especially when meeting up with difficult people or situations. But there's also ways that we can live metta in our daily lives. And I want to end us here and invite you to maybe practice some of these things. Random acts of kindness. I'm a big fan of random acts of kindness. And I've never really been the recipient of one until about 2 years ago. And it was a random act of kindness where the person in front of me in line at Starbucks paid for my coffee. That's a common random act of kindness. And I've been talking about random acts of kindness for many, many years, but I didn't understand the power of it until a random act of kindness was directed toward me. Because on the day that that happened, I had had one of the most difficult mornings of my life. And that act moved me to such a deep degree that I couldn't believe it. It just dismantled and dissolved all the defensiveness and fear I was feeling. I cried right in the Starbucks. It was so beautiful. Can you practice regularly random acts of kindness? Generate the oxytocin. Choose on a daily basis one person. Do one thing. Maybe it's as simple as grabbing your phone and sending a text message to someone who would never expect it, saying, hey, thinking of you, with a heart. I have a stack of postcards, and one of the things I've been doing over the course of the last 6 months, I just grab one, I pick someone who would never expect to get this kind of mail in the mailbox. Quick note on the back, put a stamp on it, send it in the mail. On a daily basis, is there one person that you can choose to intentionally appreciate or give applause to? Sometimes after a meeting, I will call, email, or text a teammate and say, you were a rock star today. I can't believe how you handled yourself in that meeting. That's it. That's it. Just a simple gesture. And then as often as possible, even if you're just sitting on your front porch in a quiet moment, can you just drop down into a soft state and just say, I'm just pushing out. I'm just exuding, sending out compassion. And you know what? I'm doing it for others and I'm doing it for me. Everyone benefits. If I want to really simplify it at the most basic level, the more oxytocin and serotonin I have flowing through my system, it's a ripple effect. We actually become agents of healing and change because we show up differently. It's a way of caring for ourselves. It is a powerful way of caring for others. Everyone benefits. So, we've come to the end of our hour. We're a minute over. I know that was a lot. There's a lot in lesson 6 or lesson 7. So, any questions before I let you go? Anyone? Any final words?
I think there was something in the chat box.
Yes. Who do we blame? What is a healthy way to self-criticize with the intent to get better? Okay. So let's not use the word criticize. Can I give myself feedback? Absolutely. It's really important. You know, this is not unicorns and rainbows here. It's really important that I'm also mindful of the ways in which I can do better. I can be better. What we want to do, and we can be pretty firm with ourselves, but we can be firm and loving at the same time. It's sort of like, you know, Kristen Neff says this. I'm not crazy about it, but look, it's self-compassion in a nutshell. Self-compassion. Can you treat yourself with the same kindness that you would treat a friend? It's general friendliness toward the self. So if you're my friend, or you're my child, or you're my partner, and I am in a position, or I'm about to give you feedback, not criticism, feedback, because I know that you can do better, be better, alter your course, whatever it is. I can do that in a very firm and loving way, in a very direct and loving way. So what we want to try to avoid is self-criticism, judgment, evaluation, bullying, being a motivating factor in pushing us forward, because it drains the system. It's exhausting to be self-motivated through my own bullying, through my own self-criticism and evaluation. By the way, this is very common. We all have done this. I've done it, I do it. I'm hyper vigilant of it because I know how it robs me of my own well-being. But it is really important to, on occasion, take a very honest self-inventory. And when you know you messed up, like, wow, that was bad. I don't like how that turned out. I don't like who showed up, that version of me that showed up in that moment. How can I remedy that? And if I can't remedy it with the other person, how can I vow to myself that to the best of my ability, I won't do that again? Always remembering, going back to the final aspect of the metta, that I'm a human being and I'm with an incredible heart, soul, whatever you want to call it, essence, from which only goodness only goodness arises. And so I might mess up, I might make mistakes, but what never ever changes is that essential goodness that lives in everyone, and that's a tough place to go. But that's the remembrance. And if I can ground myself in that and remind myself of that as often as possible, when I need to self-correct or course correct, I can do so in an authentic, in a conscious, in an intentional, in a firm and kind way. Just beware of the charge that's associated with criticism, judgment of the self. Well, again, we've gone a little bit over time. You can always feel free to reach out to me, Christine@meetyourcenter.com. Have a great 2 weeks. When you come back for lesson 8, Jen will be here. I might pop into that one, mindfulness of mind. It's one of my favorite lessons. It sort of brings all of this together. So maintain your practices, lean into all the support material. I believe in the support material. There is a metta practice that is included. If you want to repeat the metta practice, know that very soon you'll have access to this video, so you can just press play and listen and move through it. But the more metta, the better. The more compassion and self-compassion, the better. Commit to being an agent of change and peace and kindness in a world that so desperately needs it. I will see you all soon. Take care. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So good to see you all, or to know that you're here.